Now at 6, federal cuts and the potential Alaska tourism toll from the billions that brings in to impact on Denali Borough jobs. We hear from the Outdoor Alliance. Charter school idea. Closing Anchorage elementary schools could soon be repurposed. And fluctuating Fairbanks classes and staff sizes. What's next after budget cuts?
And high winds and heavy snow prompt warnings for Southeast. I'll let you know the statewide weather impacts I'm expecting this week.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
And good evening. Tonight, deep concern from some who work on behalf of Alaska's tourism industry. With that season vital for the state's economy quickly approaching, our Georgina Fernandez tells us uncertainty surrounding federal funding and jobs means questions surrounding the billions tourism brings to the state.
Tourism plays a vital role in Alaska's economy. Last year, according to the Alaska Travel Industry Association, we saw more than 3 million people visiting Alaska, creating an economic output of around $5.6 billion, in addition to creating over 48,000 jobs across the state. The association adding that Alaska's wilderness is a big reason why people visit the state. In 2023, the National Park Service says NPS visits made up about $2.3 billion of the state's economic output. That same year, NPS said visitor spending made up about $1.5 billion in gateway communities while visiting national parks in the state. That money going to a variety of different sectors like food and retail establishments, where visitors spend over $300 million. The association says people visiting local restaurants is what helps keep them open and thriving during the off-season. But now the Outdoor Travel Alliance warns if we see fewer people able to visit the park next year due to lack of workers from federal cuts, that could impact the local economy.
Restaurants will be impacted, retail, places that sell gifts and basic supplies to campers or RV travelers, all the way up to, again, kind of organized tour groups won't hear their cash registers or their Square devices, quote, ringing.
Now, the direct financial impact is still unknown. The Travel Association tells us this is something it has its radar going into this year's tourism season, especially as we get closer to the cruise tourism season starting up. Georgina Fernandez, Alaska's news source.
Now, the impacts to federal cuts to national parks go beyond federal land, including the Denali Borough. A large portion of its economy revolves around Denali National Park and Preserve. The mayor of the Denali Borough says those cuts have created a lot of uncertainty and concern for the community. The mayor says around 130 of nearly 1,600 residents work for the park year-round. He says about 20 of those employees have already resigned or got cut, and seasonal staff hires have come late. Federal cuts could directly impact local opportunities, tourism, and the morale of nearby residents. Now, they also impact things like fire response. Hear the borough mayor's interview on our website and mobile app. Well, it's a sunny start to the work week in South Central, but further south, stormy weather is back. Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry joins us with the forecast. Melissa?
Yeah, John, we do have newly issued watches in effect as the wind and snow are going to ramp up across Southeast. Well, about 24 hours from now, area of low pressure moving across the northern Pacific, combining with another one moving in from the south, prompting, again, those high wind watches near the Klondike Highway up near White Pass, and further south, winter storm high wind watches, I should say, in effect for areas near Ketchikan for gusts to 60 miles per hour there. We are seeing still some sunshine at this hour in Kenai, 32 degrees, 18 in Eureka, down to 24 in Golcana. Temperatures holding in the mid-30s for Anchorage, Wasilla, and Palmer, so close to 40 in Seward and across much of Prince William Sound. Temperatures much cooler across the interior, although closer to normal for this time of year. Mid-teens in Fairbanks, we've been seeing some light snow off and on. That'll continue overnight tonight into tomorrow tomorrow morning. Otherwise, most of the moisture in the state, that's going to be in southeast. You want to be prepared for heavy rain Tuesday, followed by a second storm, bringing even harsher conditions to southeast late Tuesday into Wednesday. That's heavy snow for the higher elevations, heavy rain in the lower elevations, along with those extreme winds to the south. Temperatures are still mild for this time of year. Anchorage, we're right back into the mid-30s again tomorrow. 13 for the high temperature in Fairbanks. We get some sun breaks, especially through the afternoon. 41 for the high temperature in Juneau, and back into those mid-teens with partly sunny skies in Bethel. And I'll have a closer look at that full statewide forecast, including the weekend, here in a few minutes.
All right, Melissa, thank you very much. Well, Capitol coverage, cell phones, are one of the non-school issued devices Juneau lawmakers are considering banning during regular school hours. That includes during lunch and passing periods. Anchorage Democrat Zach Fields, who's sponsoring House Bill 57, used mental health as part of his argument to House Education Committee members, saying student cell phone access at school hurts student achievement and increases bullying. But some opponents say cell phones in schools help during emergencies and makes communication better between students, parents, and teachers. Fields says HB 57 is a combination of efforts of lawmakers who are eyeing a mobile device ban for public schools and looking to push forward related legislation last year.
As there's been a growing body of evidence about the negative impact of cell phones and social media on academic achievement, both myself, Senator Wielechowski, and the Dunleavy administration all independently drafted bills to do essentially the same thing late last year. So my bill is now consistent with the proposed language from the administration, and we had a lot of discussion about that.
Now, under Fields' bill, certain technology like some hearing aids that use wireless technology would still be allowed. The bill was held in the community today. We expand our coverage with school administrator and state education leaders' testimony on our website and our mobile app. Well, the Anchorage School District is recommending 2 charter schools moved into soon-to-be vacant elementary schools. An ASD memo shows the district asking the school board to approve a move for Rilke Schule, German Immersion School, into Lakewood Elementary, and for Highland Academy Charter School to move to the building that is currently Nunaka Valley Elementary. The elementary schools are scheduled to close at the end of the school year as part of the district's right-sizing program. Moving into an ASD-owned building means that the charter schools would no longer need to pay rent, although they would be responsible for utilities and building maintenance costs. The school board is set to vote on the recommendation at their meeting on April 1st. Well, education funding in the interior, the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District is releasing its proposed budget for the 2025-2026 school year, and parents are speaking out. The proposal eliminates 167 positions from the budget, including teaching and support staff. It also calls for more than 2 additional students per class from kindergarten through 12th grade. Now, the school board is meeting to potentially make changes before the budget goes to the borough. Board members Melissa Burnett and Bobby Burgess say parents and teachers have expressed concern about increased class sizes and the effect it could have on student learning. Jen Gunderson, who has a child attending Pearl Creek Elementary and one at West Valley High School, says these changes will affect her children. She blames outmigration of residents and insufficient state funding for the current problem. She says that she understands the board is in a difficult position.
I think it's unfortunate that it is happening, but I also understand why, and I feel slightly hopeful that right sizing our district can ultimately help our kids long term, as far as the money, the limited resources that we have actually going to students and not to partially empty buildings.
Now, this proposal comes after the school board voted to close 3 schools in the coming academic year and use contract labor for custodial services. The board has until April 1st to submit a final budget proposal to the borough. Alaska's news source investigates child abuse in Alaska. Some advocates who deal with improving the system to fight that problem told some state lawmakers recently they feel there's a loophole in state law in cases of physical abuse. Well, that includes Anchorage Police Sergeant Todd Kearns. Kearns told State Children's Caucus members last week while a 2019 law change made reporting sexual abuse cases mandatory, the term physical abuse was not included in the law's language. The sergeant said that limits police's ability to act early in investigations.
We just want to have the ability to be there sooner so that we can start investigating sooner. It would also increase the efficiency and coordination effectiveness of law enforcement investigations and improve child safety. We can get involved sooner to keep children safe.
Also at that hearing, a Providence doctor who deals with child abuse cases showed pictures, including children with burns. He says do not show a difference under state law between discipline and unreasonable force. Anchorage Senator Loki Tobin told Alaska's News Source Investigates legislation is in the early phases of being drafted, but so far there is not a timeline. Well, still ahead, following up on a federal freeze impacting electric vehicle expansion and how it could shape the future of our highways.
You're watching Alaska's News Source.
The suspension of the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program is freezing efforts to expand accessibility to electric vehicle charging stations in the interior of Alaska, but also along the rail belt in various communities around Alaska. Leaders of the Alaska Energy Authority say they've spent the last 3 years developing a plan to add 9 EV charging stations between Homer and Fairbanks as part of what they call the Alternative Fuel Corridor. And while they were awaiting approval from the NEVI program to move forward with the project, a suspension of that program now leaves those plans without guidance until this summer.
We just are not, we don't have the funding to go forward, but we have all the information that if funding ever becomes available again, we could move at a fairly rapid pace.
Area Executive Director Curtis Thayer is also hopeful that new guidance would loosen requirements for the funding, allowing the Alaska Energy to move forward with a second phase of the project that would create charging stations in rural communities and locations along the Marine Highway. But whether or not the funding will be approved at all remains to be seen.
Thanks for listening. Click subscribe so you can get the latest podcast from Alaska's News Source automatically. And stay up to date with breaking news and in-depth reporting available for free 24/7 with the Alaska's News Source app.